Hey, welcome to another hammock talk with Logan. So, today I want to talk about endowment funds and how they appeal to green Buddhism or apply, and why would you want to donate to an endowment fund? Uh, well, you want your money to go, you know, for as long as possible, for instance. And say, for instance, you make a donation to Wikipedia or someone 1 year, and then next year they're back at it and asking you for more money. And then it seems like every year they want money because, well, they spent it all. Um, there is an alternative, though it does require thinking ahead, long term thinking, and that's an endowment fund. So what an endowment fund is say a large block of money. For example, say it costs $30 to rent a space to have a meditation sit for a group. Then uh, someone donates $30, and you can use that, and then the money's gone. However, there's an alternative if you have someone donates $1,000, then over the course of a year, that will give you on if 3% interest, it will give you $30, and after 34 years, you'll have more than $1,000 that have been paid out. And another interesting thing that you could do is, say someone makes $1,000 donation, then you could say every year, this meeting was sponsored by so and so, because of their donation 50 years ago, something like this. So that way, your money is contributing to the cause for much, much longer, and the cause itself can go on for much longer. Uh, but yeah, as you can tell, uh, considering $1,000 at 3% only gives you $30. That's a pretty big difference there between 1,000 and 30. And well, interests are variable, so sometimes they're less, sometimes they're more. Sometimes it's only 1%, and so the endowment fund has to be 100 times larger than what you need to have as income that year. But at other times, it's bigger. So you always want to have some kind of safety net with your endowment fund to make sure that it's big enough for those low interest years. Another interesting thing with if you have a large enough endowment fund is that you can actually pay staff. For instance, in Green Buddhism or in Buddhism, you have hermits and monks, uh, and say people that are teaching at the meditation centers. And say, for instance, they may be meditating most of the time, or if they have a vow of, you know, not using money or whatnot, but they still need to eat. They still need to, pay rent and all these other things. Uh, so, with say a $350,000 endowment fund, you could pay a person $10,500 a year. Um, and that would be the kind of the same, that would be kind of a basic income that would allow them to meet all their basic needs. And now that person has kind of job security. They don't have to kind of, the meditation center that's, staffed by these kinds of people, they don't have to beg people for money. They don't have to continuously solicit donations. People kind of like, people know they need money, but it's kind of annoying a little bit, and it's a little bit sad. Like, it also feels kind of fiscally irresponsible to not have an endowment fund that uh, allows them to have this kind of security. And another thing that's good with this kind of income security is that you don't have to make bad deals. You know, if someone tries to bribe you or something, you don't need that money. You don't need to kind of strive for ever more money just in case, uh, you run out or something, because you'll always have the same amount every year or every month, or whatever the case may be, because of the endowment fund. And similarly, you can have an endowment fund like for meetings, like I was saying, and for paying employees. And you can have an endowment fund for paying the rent, or even buying a house. So, say for instance, uh, you have an endowment fund of like 200,000 at 3%, then you'd be able to pay about $500 a month for rent. So at 250,000, paying like $650 a month for rent. Now, in Owen's Sound around here, anyways, that's enough to rent a commercial office. And if you have like, say, double that or whatever, then you could even buy a house and pay the mortgage and the utility bills, all out of the endowment fund, without actually having to, you know, buy it, in case, you want to sell it later, or whatever. Um, though for a large purchase like a house or a piece of real estate, it really might make more sense to buy it outright. However, then you no longer have the endowment fund, and if the market collapses and you can't resell the property, then you're kind of sorry, out of luck. So paying it off with an endowment fund over time may make more fiscal sense, especially if you want to move later on. Uh, and another interesting thing was that, say, going back to having an endowment fund for a person, you can also have an endowment fund for a group of people. So, for instance, in Buddhism, a sangha is traditionally three uh, stream entrants. So that's kind of three people that have reached the first stage of enlightenment. So, for simplicity, let's call them, even though they're called sotapannas, let's say you have three bodhisattvas. And a bodhisattva is someone that is compassionate to all beings. And so you have a center with three bodhisattvas, and at $10,000 a year, that would be about $1 million for the endowment fund. But you could have like bigger ones, like for 4 million, you could have 12 bodhisattvas, and then they would be like a carbon atom. And for eight million, you could have an oxygen atom, and then you could make and if say one is a hydrogen atom, so then you could start making molecules, like carbohydrates. You could even like have a nitrogen atom. You could have some interesting configurations of very stable communities, because now they're basically being paid in perpetuity. And of course, I'm using this kind of in a religious model, but if you want to have any kind of long term business and you want to offer your employees lifetime employment, or at least some kind of basic income, even when times are going rough in your industry, then it would make sense to have an endowment fund similar to how you may be having something like a pension plan for everybody. So having an endowment fund would kind of help put the pressure off how much you have to pay everybody by having all the fixed cost paid off by your fixed asset, which is your endowment fund, and then just using your variable income for your variable costs, like new projects and things like that. And so with the charities, at least in from what I was reading, often to make it an endowment fund contribution, it has to be specified by the donor. Um, though I was thinking ideally, you'd have a certain amount of money going to variable uh, usage, so that you could have, like, say, even in your first year, you could have more than a couple meetings if you have, only a few thousand in your endowment fund. But some people donated, a couple $100 into your variable fund as well. Then, you you could have a few meetings and then maybe get some more members and some more donations. So yeah, that's one of the things I am interested in doing for most of my businesses, is having fairly large endowment funds, because these businesses, they're not meant to be kind of just around for a couple of years kind of thing. I mean, as a bodhisattva, I hope to, help others become bodhisattvas as well, and then we can find each other as tulkus in our future incarnations and bring each other back into the fold, so that we can continue our missions for many, many lifetimes. All right, namaste.